Hello and welcome to Sound Art Magic. My name is ZANETA, and this is the channel where we talk about creativity and we talk about magic, meditation, tarot, sound, listening, you name it. So today we are talking about why we meditate. There are so many reasons why people want to get started on meditating and what it means in their personal practices, especially if you're going at it from a very spiritual point of view, or maybe you're going at it because you feel like this is a self-development piece that you want to bring in. There are so many reasons, and all of them are valid and all of them are real. And just to let you know, there's no right or wrong reason. There's no right or wrong way to start meditating. Just to put that out there first and foremost. And I think I should give you a little bit of what is meditating, a little bit of a definition before we even get started into how to start. So meditation is basically an internal focused practice. It can be anything from silent observation of your body's sensations or your breath. It could be observation of the sounds around you. It could be gazing into a flame and just allowing that energy to kind of fill you up and noticing that. It could be meditating with an object such as prayer beads or malas or crystals, or different plants and herbs after you've ingested them or used their smoke. There are many, many, many different ways to meditate and many practices. For the longest time, I held that meditation had to be something that was always silent. You always had your eyes closed and you always had to be sitting in full lotus position and just be like very stoic in a sense. And I'm here to tell you, after 27 years of meditating, basically there are a lot of things called meditation, and a lot of cultures and a lot of traditions and a lot of really wonderful ways to get into a meditation type of practice. At the beginning of this definition, I had said it's an internal focused practice. So what I mean is, when we're externally focused, we're looking at things like, what's on social media, what project do I need to do next, who do I need to call, maybe you're watching a show or something, maybe you're reading a book. These things are all you moving about in the world, looking at something, doing something. When we meditate, we actually kind of do a little bit of a withdrawal. We are generally still on some level. Some people do meditative practices that involve movement, so I'm not going to count those out. But you're generally still, you're generally focusing inward, and you're coming back to yourself and noticing what comes up, noticing feelings, noticing sensations, noticing all sorts of stuff. There's so many things. Sometimes people get downloads, they channel from meditations and things like that. It's a time where you're really going inward. You're not looking at everything around you, but you're really coming back to yourself and to the connection that you have with yourself, with source, and maybe just in general, your spiritual connection or your sense of well-being. It doesn't have to be a spiritual practice either. It can be totally just for wellness. But there are many reasons why people get into meditation, and there's, like I said, no right or wrong way. So now that we've covered what is meditation, I think it's important to cover what is so important about meditating, especially for witches. If we're trying to start meditating, I think it's pretty clear that we should start off by knowing why meditation is so helpful for us. So meditation is the process of cultivating awareness, cultivating focus, cultivating an ability to set your intention, to stay on task in some ways, and to stay present and in the zone, so to speak, to stay in that flow. And this is a really, really big thing for people who do magical practices such as witchcraft. If you're working magic, you really need to be able to be aware, to set intentions, to be focused, to stay in the moment so that you can do the things, channel the energy in a way that will actually shift the outcomes. You need to know the energy in order to work with the energy. You need to be aware of it. If you're just scrolling on your phone and you're not aware of the subtle energies that are around you or that are happening, and you're trying to work a spell, you're probably not going to be able to work much of a spell if you're scrolling on your phone. So meditation helps us develop a very strong ability to focus, because you're actually just allowing everything around you to kind of fade out oftentimes, and you're coming back to this place, back inwardly. And everything in our society, basically, especially in Western society, tells us not to listen inward. You have to follow someone else's rules. You have to go to school and listen to your teacher. You have to go and read books, and those books are going to tell you what's right or what's wrong. It doesn't really focus your attention towards your own inner guidance and your own intuition. Meditation disrupts that narrative entirely. It says your intuition is one of the most important voices, if not the most important. And it encourages you to get used to knowing what that sounds like, or what's in your channel that might be kind of making it hard to hear that inner guidance. So that's why it's so important, especially for us witches. Now, how do you get started? Oh my gosh. I think the first thing, and please take all of this with your own intuition front and center. So filter it through. If none of this sounds right to you and you feel uncomfortable, I encourage you to sit with it. But if you sit with it and realize it doesn't work for you, then just take a breather and say, ZANETA's cool and those are cool ideas, but I think this is the way for me. Kudos to you if you're listening to your inner guidance. But how to get started? There are so many ways, right? Like I mentioned earlier, there are a ton of things that you could do to meditate. A ton of different kinds of meditations. I really encourage you to use your creative spark to start this process. If there's a particular thing that lights your fire or makes you smile or interests you or just plain old looks pretty, maybe that's a place to start for you. If you're thinking you have to be sitting alone on a mountaintop or in a cave and hungry and by yourself and, doing this for 10 days, and that idea does not sound appealing to you at all and does not light your fire, then don't start there. Don't start there. I really, really encourage you to start where you feel called, because that's part of your magic, right? Like, your magic is a creative calling. It's a call to create something different, to make a magical working. And so if you're getting into meditation, chances are, if you like crystals and you think crystals could be cool to meditate with, go in that direction. It's all good. There's no right or wrong way to start. If you're interested in starting a silent practice where you sit for a certain amount of time per day and maybe you notice your breath, or you notice sensations on your body, there's a couple of thoughts I have for you there. So the first thing I would recommend is to start with a breathing practice. This is different from breath work. I am not a trained breath worker by any means, and I have dear friends who are, and I will link to their site. My friend Shauna Bryant is really amazing, and she leads breath work, and I think she has some videos on YouTube, so you can check her out. But this is a little different. This is actually just noticing your breath, which is called Anapana. In the, I think that's in the Pali. Maybe that's Pali. Anyway, Pali is a ancient Buddhist language. But essentially, Anapana is breathing and noticing your breath in and out, in and out. You can notice it from your nostrils, like where your nostrils are and where the breath comes in and out through your nose. You can notice it from your chest, just like rising and falling, rising and falling. You can just notice it. You don't have to say any words internally to yourself. You don't have to give this commentary. If words and thoughts do come up, that is okay. You can also notice it in your belly, if your belly rises and falls. Just wherever on your body it feels good to notice your breath. My second recommendation, aside from starting with a breathing practice, is to set a timer for a very short period of time. If you will believe this, when I was in, I think I was maybe around like 30 or like 29, I can't remember. So, you know, a few years ago or whatever, I had set out to do, I wanted to do a 10-day silent meditation retreat, which is 10 days of silent meditation. The practice is called Vipassana, and I'll link that as well below. But essentially, I wanted to do this silent 10-day meditation retreat. A few other folks in my life were really into it and thought that I would be really into it as well. But 10 days of approximately 10 hours a day of meditating was really intimidating to me. I thought, how could I ever meditate for 10 hours in a day and then do it for like 9 days or whatever, however many days it is. And what I did was I started with 3 minutes. I started with 3 minutes. I could definitely meditate more than 3 minutes before that. I had been meditating for a very long time and was comfortable with meditating for up to an hour easily. But I started with a 3-minute timer, and I just went up and I went up until I could do 45 minutes and like stay in 45 minutes, sit for 45 minutes, because one of the hardest things for me was physically staying still and sitting for that long. So that worked for me, and it took me like a year. It took me a year of working on it, but I did it. So I encourage you all to please go ahead, set a timer. It could be for 30 seconds, you know, just sitting 30 seconds and allowing your breath to be the only thing you focus on. I guarantee it will shift your way of being. I guarantee you'll feel more calm, at the very least. You know, noticing your breath reminds you that you are alive and that you are receiving the gift of life. And that's a blessing in and of itself. So regardless of the shakeout of your meditation practice, or how you're starting, or how you're just exploring, at least you're feeling a little more calm, and you're probably going to get some sense of just connection to the earth. So that's really awesome. Go you! Now my next point is some different kinds of meditation. So I mentioned them earlier, but I want to like go a little more into them. So the first kind that I had mentioned, I think, was Vipassana. So Vipassana was the meditation where it's like a body scanning meditation. You're essentially going from the crown of your head, down your face, down your neck, down your shoulders, your chest, your arms, down your torso to your seat, through your legs. You're going on the back side, and you're noticing any sensations that arise. So maybe I should have covered this actually even in how to get started, but what about when thoughts arise that that are not part of your meditation? What about that, ZANETA? If thoughts arise That's okay. That is natural. That does not mean you're a bad meditator. That does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. That does not mean you can't meditate. That does not mean that you're not doing it right or that there's something wrong with the meditation. It just means that there are thoughts that are coming up in your head at that moment. Isn't that interesting? So there are no judgments to this. And I think when you get started on a meditation practice, it's really, really important to just be so loving to yourself, so kind, so gentle, so tender, and to just say, yeah, I don't have to be perfect at this. And I think you'll find that if you're more soft towards yourself, instead of being like, must focus, if you're more soft towards yourself, you're probably going to find it a little bit easier, dare I say, to get into a place of relaxation and coming into your awareness and starting to notice your breath. It's going to feel a little bit more fluid to enter into that zone. So that's a little tip from me. Don't worry about whether or not you have thoughts, distracting thoughts, or distracting emotions. Sometimes we come to the meditation very angry, very sad. It's okay. Meditation is meant to hold you wherever you are. So chances are you're going to be better off for meditating, even if you feel like you are ready to punch a hole in the wall. Meditating will probably help. So, that's just a few tips. I've come to the meditation practice with some of the strongest feelings ever. So just note that whatever you are going through, whatever is happening to you, your meditation practice is meant to hold it unconditionally. So we're getting back to different types of meditation. We had Vipassana, which is sensations. We had Anapana, which is breathing, noticing your breath. Not everyone calls that Anapana, so don't worry. Not everyone calls body scanning Vipassana. These are just terms I use because these are practices and trainings and things and teachings that people imparted on me in my experiences. You do not have to use the same terms. There's guided meditation. So at one point in my life, I really struggled to meditate. I had just lost my father-in-law, and I was in such a state of shock and grief that I could not calm down. I could barely calm down. Enough to even just sit and close my eyes. And this was after like 20 years or something of 26 years of meditating. So this was very recent. This was like last year. And I was feeling so grief-stricken that I couldn't calm down to meditate and to guide myself through that process. So I invested in recording my own. I actually, I bought an app, I used Calm. I've used Simply Meditating, that app. And I used my own guided meditations. So I actually created meditations for myself to use at that time that were helpful, and just giving myself permission. I'm not saying that people who use guided meditations are like using training wheels or something. No, that's not how this works. First of all, it's not a competition. There's no ladder to climb here. But for me, I had been used to being able to essentially meditate and go through the process of meditating like very, very comfortably. And when I couldn't, it really scared me. And it felt like starting over with meditating. And so having a guided meditation was really, really wonderful. And there are all sorts of guided meditations out there. In fact, I'm going to link my guided meditation down below, which is calling your power back and energy, bringing your energy back into your body and grounding and shielding and protecting yourself. So really, guided meditations can be really wonderful. Now, Another kind of meditation, visualizations. So sometimes you'll pick up a book at like a local metaphysical shop, or it'll be like a witch's book of spells or something like that, and there'll be a passage written where you can do visualization. You can do some journeying, and some people really consider that more like meditation. I myself actually kind of put that in a separate category for me, but that's not necessarily for everyone. And I want you to know that that's a way that you can move forward as well. By visualizing, oh, I'm walking down the steps, I'm going to this beautiful lake. Oh, and now in the lake I meet this, beautiful creature, and the creature tells me some message that I need to hear, and I allow myself to sit there for a moment enjoying the sounds of the water and the trees. All of that is a visualization experience, a journeying experience. Another form of meditation is to meditate on something. So I'll show you an example. We have this card. Jeez, there's so much glare. I'm gonna figure out this camera and this like light thing one of these days. I promise you. Hashtag goals for 2020. So this is a card from Marcella Kroll's deck, Sacred Symbols Oracle deck. And this is my card for the year, actually, New Life. And this card can serve as a meditation for me to meditate on. So I can gaze into it. I can first come to my breathing, relax, and once I feel relaxed enough, I can allow the energy of this card to connect, to start exchanging with me. I can open up that exchange and that flow. And I can allow that to fill me up. I can feel it. I can feel the blue, the color, the ankh, what it represents, anything that comes up, any messages, any deities that I work with that might be connected to the ankh. There's many, 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 many things. So I really encourage you, if you feel called to use tarot or oracle decks, connecting with the energy and meditating with the energy of cards is so powerful. I love to do it with court cards in the tarot. If I get a court card, or I want to work with a particular court card to get to know them, or the major arcana, I will sit and I will meditate for a while, and then I'll pick the card and I'll just kind of look, and I will like imagine being either the card, the figure in the card itself, or speaking to the card, or speaking to the being. Like there's so many things, so many ways I can imagine like going on adventures with them, stuff like that. So that's kind of like a combination of meditating and journeying / visualizing. The last meditation that I wanted to touch upon, well, I actually have a couple more, sorry. This video might be a little long. I'm gonna try to make it shorter, but it's tough. This is a heavy topic, so you're not gonna want to skimp when you're starting out. So this next one is using objects to meditate. So I have this amazing crystal. Oh, isn't it so beautiful? Like, it's kind of crazy. I love it so much. I saw this in a shop and I was like, that is the winter sun. I've never seen the winter sun in crystal form. And I was just so mesmerized. It's a clear quartz crystal. And basically, I meditate with this sucker. I take this thing in my hands, I close my eyes, I breathe, I spend some time. I like to spend a lot of time first with just my breathing. And if I haven't grounded and I haven't done any of that stuff, I generally don't use objects. That's just me though. And that's just where I am currently. So it might change. I'm gonna let myself change if I need to. But meditating with an object can be really, really amazing, especially if you have some really strong connections to that object. this crystal has not been in my, hasn't been in my home for very long, but it has definitely been something that I felt very strongly connected to. And when I bring it into meditation, I get a totally different meditation experience with things that I've used for many years, with guided meditations that I've used for several times. It's a different experience when I'm using this particular item. Some people also like to use like, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad witch. It's so tangly. Anyway, I'm not gonna focus on that. Keep in the game, ZANETA. So basically you can use rosaries, you can use witches' ladders, pagan prayer beads, you know, malas. You can use anything like that to count and to say a mantra, an affirmation, words of power, a prayer many times, essentially immersing your being and drinking up the energy from that prayer so that it becomes like it's merged into you, it becomes a part of you. The truth of that prayer or that mantra becomes inextricably intertwined with your essence. If you really, really want to call something in, like Mother Mary, please, I thank Mother Mary every day for blessing me with this, you know, with health and unconditional love or something like that, and you want to know that at your core and you want to live that truth, using repeated mantras, chanting, all of that can be a form of meditation, and a powerful one. Which brings me to meditation and sound. So, one of my favorite ways to meditate is to listen. I like to listen to the sounds around me, and I like to listen to the sounds within me. And that may be really confusing to some folks, but I like to listen to my heartbeat and to just like be with my heartbeat for a long time. Listening is not just what we hear, but it is what we perceive. So you can really notice your environment, notice the cars, notice, you know, maybe the sound of laughter at a playground not far away. Maybe you're in the subway and you're riding the train and you notice like someone's beatboxing, or maybe you hear footsteps. Maybe you just hear the heating in your house creaking in the shifts. Those things are all part of your experience, and they're part of becoming present. And it's still part of that internal focus. It's just that you're noticing. So noticing you're noticing is what happens when you're listening and you're becoming aware of your perceptions while you're listening. So that's one of my favorite ways to meditate. I should mention that people meditate outside. They meditate indoors. They meditate on the train. They meditate all over the place. So there's no specific spot that you need to be in. There's one of the best things about meditation that I will say, and something that few people really say enough, in my opinion, is that they don't talk about how it's free, it's accessible to everyone, and you don't need any special equipment or training to do it. Yeah. I'm going to say that again. It's basically a practice for coming back into realignment, for calming down, that is completely accessible to every person, barring any serious mental impediment. And what I mean by that is, if for some reason you are, you know, unable to have total cognitive function, that could be definitely a struggle for meditating. Because you have to choose to be able to shift your focus and your awareness on things. So I wanted to just make that clear. But if you have your cognitive ability and your function, you do not need to be, in shape to do this. You don't, you don't have to be like on some fancy cushion or wearing some fancy yoga pants or having a special candle or having, rosaries or having a crystal. You don't have to have any of that stuff to meditate. All you have to do is have you, your awareness, your focus, and your breath. And that's it. You just notice your breathing. You just notice it. So those are my my main kinds of meditations. There are some movement ones, I will say that. There are some like walking meditations that people do. There are art meditations where people make art, like mandalas, and and people sing and they do things like that. I still kind of put those in a different category for myself because they're fairly active, and they're kind of like they're sending energy out. And in a sense, I find that most meditative practices are when we are noticing how we are receiving energy. And that's the difference for me, usually, with meditation. What else will I say? There are like labyrinths that people do sometimes. Some people do dance meditations. So there are many, many, many kinds of ways of meditating. And if you feel called to a particular medium or modality or a particular object, then I encourage you to listen to yourself. I encourage you to follow that creative calling and to try things. No, there's no one size fits all for the rest of your life. Most people who I know who have been meditating for a very long time will try many different meditations. They'll go through many different phases. Sometimes they'll be really into meditating. Sometimes they will quit altogether. None of this makes you a good or bad meditator. But if you would like to start out 2020 getting into a meditation practice and you're wondering where to begin, I highly recommend setting that timer, making a small amount of time per day to do it. And, trying some guided meditations. You can try mine, which is down below, or you can try an app like Calm, or I know there's another one. Simply Meditating was like one of the ones that I really liked because I liked the woman's voice. Most people's voices I really find I'm kind of sensitive to, and I have to like be aware of that because that will change whether or not I do the meditation. And then my last thing that I want to say is that please go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter if you haven't already. That's where I put a lot of my meditations, my PDF guides, my new moon tarot readings for art and creativity, where I put all of my spells and things like that. There's so much free content that I put in my newsletter. It's kind of intense, and I love it, and I'm so happy about it, and I want to continue sharing that with other people. So please consider subscribing, and please consider subscribing to this channel because this is not the only time we're going to get into different magical practices. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you find some traction in starting meditating and that you feel empowered to do so. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. And yeah, I'm wishing you all a really amazing 2020 and a start to this, like, we're in Aquarius season, so it's kind of like we're getting there. We're getting ready for Aries season. It's not far away. But I'm just excited. This is already shaping up to be a really beautiful year, and I hope that meditating supports you in your journey. So thanks for watching, and take care.